touch her again, and I'll burn this entire empire to ash, starting with you. The words cut through the Romano estate's grand hall like a knife through silk. Crystal chandeliers threw diamonds of light across marble floors that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. Zara Okafor stood in her maid's uniform, black dress, white apron, hands steady at her sides, staring down Celestina Valerio. Nobody spoke to Celestina that way. Nobody survived speaking to Celestina that way. The woman who ruled New York's criminal underworld didn't blink. Didn't reach for the pistol everyone knew she carried. She just studied this nobody, this invisible black woman who cleaned toilets and changed sheets, like she was seeing her for the first time. Before we start, make sure to hit like and subscribe, and really I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. 3 weeks earlier, Zara had arrived with a reference letter and a background check so clean it practically sparkled. Marcus, Celestina's head of security, had frowned at the paperwork. Her background is too clean. He'd muttered, but they needed staff. The engagement party was coming. 500 guests. Senators. Judges. 6 crime families from 3 states. Everything had to be perfect. Celestina Valerio had spent 4 years building this moment. She'd eliminated rivals, absorbed their territories, turned her dead father's crumbling operation into a billion-dollar empire that stretched from Brooklyn to Bangkok. At 32, she wore power like other women wore perfume. Her dark hair pulled back so tight it could snap. Her Louboutins clicked like gunshots. Her 15-carat blood diamond engagement ring caught light like a warning. Men twice her size flinched when she entered rooms. Her own lieutenants stammered when she asked questions. Police commissioners took her calls. Federal judges owed her favors they'd never admit to. And now this maid, this nobody, had just threatened her. The Romano estate sprawled across 8 acres of Westchester County. Marble from Italy. Art stolen from private collections in Europe. Security systems that would make the Pentagon jealous. Walls that had witnessed deals worth millions, executions that would never see courtroom light, secrets that kept powerful people awake at night. Viktor Konstantin was supposed to be the final piece. The brutal heir to the Russian Bratva Empire. Their marriage would create something unstoppable, a dynasty that would control the Northeast Corridor for generations. He was dangerous, yes. Violent, absolutely. But Celestina had convinced herself she could manage him. She'd been wrong before. Never this wrong. The engagement party started in 2 hours. Already, black SUVs lined the circular driveway. Security teams swept the grounds. Caterers moved through the kitchen like an army on mission. In the grand ballroom, ice sculptures sweated under warm lights. Champagne chilled in buckets that cost more than Zara's yearly salary. 500 guests. All of them watching. All of them judging. All of them calculating whether Celestina Valerio was still the queen of this brutal chess game, or if she was finally showing weakness. And somewhere in this fortress of wealth and violence, something had gone terribly, irreversibly wrong. Would Celestina choose power, or would she choose something she'd forgotten how to value? The answer would change everything. Celestina descended the marble staircase in Valentino crimson silk that flowed like blood. The dress cost $40,000. She'd worn it to send a message. She wasn't a bride in white, she was a conqueror in red. Viktor stood at the bottom of the stairs in his custom Italian suit, his hand already reaching for her waist before she'd taken the last step. Possessive. Always possessive. The grand ballroom glittered with wealth that most people couldn't imagine. Federal Judge Patricia Morrison raised her champagne glass and toast. Police Commissioner James Reed laughed at one of Victor's jokes. The kind of joke that wasn't funny, but you laughed anyway because laughing kept you alive. 3 state senators clustered near the bar. The Castellano family occupied the west wing tables. The Moretti family held the east. This was Celestina's coronation. 4 years of bloodshed and strategy, negotiations and eliminations, all leading to this moment. Victor's ring on her finger, matching blood diamond, 17 carats, mine from conflict zones she didn't ask about. His family's empire stretched from Moscow to Miami. Together, they would be unstoppable. She should have felt triumphant. Instead, her skin crawled. Viktor's hand moved from her waist to the small of her back, then lower. In public. In front of 500 guests. Marking territory. She'd learned to ignore it. This was how powerful men operated. They took. They claimed. They didn't ask. But then she saw it. Across the ballroom, near the dessert service station, Viktor's other hand slid down the back of one of the servers. Teresa. 21 years old. Guatemalan immigrant. Sent money home to her mother and 3 younger siblings every month. Celestina knew this because she made it her business to know everything. Teresa's face drained of color. She tried to step away. Viktor's grip tightened on her wrist, pulling her closer as he whispered something that made tears start rolling down the girl's cheeks. Heat flooded Celestina's chest, not shock, not horror, but rage. Pure, cold rage. Not at what Viktor was doing. She'd seen worse. Done worse. Ordered worse. The world was cruel, and she'd simply learned to be crueler first. No, her rage came from the disrespect. This was her house. Her night. Her staff. Her territory. Viktor was marking his claim on everything, including things that belonged to her. She started moving before she'd made the conscious decision. Then Zara appeared. The maid materialized beside Viktor like smoke, holding a silver tray. "Sir, the kitchen needs Teresa for the dessert service." Her voice was respectful, soft, almost apologetic. But her hand was already gently extracting the girl from Viktor's grip, smooth as water flowing around stone. Viktor's face darkened. His jaw clenched. Everyone within 10 feet felt the temperature drop. "I didn't dismiss her." "Of course not, sir." Zara's smile never wavered. "But Mrs. Romano requested her specifically for the chocolate presentation. I wouldn't want to disappoint the bride." The lie was perfect. Smooth as the champagne in everyone's glasses. Teresa slipped away before Viktor could respond, disappearing into the crowd of servers like she'd never existed. Viktor turned to find her gone. His expression twisted into something ugly. For 3 seconds, everyone nearby held their breath. Then he smiled, that charming smile he wore for cameras and witnesses, and turned back to the party like nothing had happened. But Celestina had seen it. The flash of violence in his eyes. The way his hand had clenched into a fist. The way he'd looked at Zara, really looked at her, like he was cataloging her face for later. Nobody defied Viktor Konstantin. The Bratva heir had built his reputation on making examples of people who showed him disrespect. His enemies didn't just disappear. They disappeared in ways that made other people too scared to even think about crossing him. And this maid, this nobody in a black dress and white apron, had just humiliated him in front of New York's criminal elite. Celestina watched Zara move through the crowd, refilling water glasses, clearing plates, invisible again. Like the interaction had never happened. Like she hadn't just signed her own death warrant. Either incredibly brave, or incredibly stupid. Celestina couldn't decide which. But she knew one thing, she'd be watching Zara Okafor very, very closely from now on. Because women who moved like that, who lied like that, who intervened like that, weren't just maids. They were something far more dangerous. 1 week after the engagement party, Viktor Konstantin moved into the Romano estate permanently. Pre-wedding tradition, he'd called it. Easier for planning, he'd explained. Celestina had agreed because the alliance required compromise. She regretted it within 48 hours. His true nature emerged like rot beneath expensive cologne. The inappropriate comments started first, casual observations about the younger staff members' bodies, their clothes, their smiles. Then came the accidental touches. Brushing past them in narrow hallways. Hands on shoulders that lingered 3 seconds too long. That predatory smile when he caught them alone in the wine cellar or the library or the East Wing laundry room. The other maids started taking longer routes to avoid certain hallways. They traveled in pairs. They stopped working after sunset unless another staff member was nearby. Celestina noticed. She always noticed. She'd built her empire on ruthlessness, not morality. She'd authorized shipments that destroyed lives. Ordered executions that left children without parents. Bankrupted families who'd crossed her. The world didn't run on kindness and mercy. It ran on power and fear and the willingness to do what others wouldn't. But she had rules. Lines she didn't cross. No children. No civilians who weren't in the game. And absolutely no preying on people under her protection, which her household staff technically were. Viktor came from the old world. The world where power meant taking whatever you wanted. Where women, especially powerless women, were commodities. Objects. Toys to be used and discarded. Celestina had known this about him. She'd convinced herself she could control it after the marriage. That she could set boundaries once the alliance was solidified. She'd been lying to herself. On Tuesday afternoon, Celestina sat in her office reviewing shipping manifests for the new casino operation in Atlantic City. Numbers that looked legitimate on paper but represented underground gambling networks worth $20 million annually. Her phone buzzed with texts from 3 different lieutenants. The Moretti family was testing their borders again. The Castellanos wanted a meeting about territory disputes in Brooklyn. Business as usual. Then she heard the scream. Cut short. Muffled. Coming from somewhere below. Celestina grabbed the pistol from her desk drawer, compact 9mm, always loaded, and ran. Her Louboutins hit marble like gunshots. Down the main staircase. Through the entrance hall. Following the sound that wasn't there anymore but had carved itself into her memory. The wine cellar. The door was locked from inside. Through the thick wood, she heard Teresa sobbing. Viktor's voice, low and threatening. Stop crying. You should be honored. Do you know who I am? Do you know what I could do to you? To your family back in. Celestina shot the lock off. The wine cellar door exploded inward. Wood splinters and brass fragments scattered across stone floor. Celestina stepped through gun smoke, her pistol still raised, her finger on the trigger. Teresa was pressed against the wine racks. Her uniform dress torn at the shoulder. Mascara running down her cheeks. Her whole body shaking like she'd been pulled from ice water. Viktor turned. Not afraid. Annoyed. Like Celestina had interrupted a phone call instead of whatever the hell this was. Get out, Celestina said. Her voice came out quiet. Flat. The same tone she used when she ordered executions. When she told people they had 24 hours to leave the city, or they'd leave in a body bag. Teresa ran. The girl didn't look back. Didn't stop. Just fled up the stairs like her life depended on the speed. Viktor smiled. Actually smiled. He adjusted his cuffs, 18-karat gold cufflinks shaped like wolves, and straightened his collar like nothing had happened. She was getting dramatic. You know how they get when. Get. Out. Something in her voice made him pause. He'd heard her negotiate with rival families. Watched her authorize hits that left witnesses afraid to testify. Seen her stare down federal investigators without blinking. But this was different. This was the voice that came before the violence. The stillness before the storm. He misread it. Thought she was angry about the mess. About the disruption. About having to deal with staff drama 3 weeks before the wedding. We'll discuss boundaries after the wedding, he said, dismissive. Already moving toward the door. Already planning to go back to whatever he'd been doing, like this was just a minor inconvenience. The girl's fine. They always cry. Doesn't mean anything. He walked forward. Zara Okafor stood blocking the doorway. Nobody had heard her arrive. She was simply there, holding a wine bottle by the neck like a club. Her expression had changed. The quiet, deferential Maid was gone. In her place stood someone who radiated violence like heat from fire. Her eyes were completely calm. That was the terrifying part. Not rage. Not fear. Just professional assessment. Like she was calculating exactly how much force would be required, where to strike, how to disable without killing. Viktor stopped 3 feet away. For the first time since Celestina had known him, uncertainty crossed his face. Move! Make me! Zara said softly. He reached for her. Big mistake. What happened next took 3 seconds but would replay in Celestina's memory for the rest of her life. Viktor's hand came up fast. He was trained. Brutal. Had killed men with those hands. But Zara moved like water, flowing around his grab, the wine bottle coming down on his wrist with surgical precision. Crack. The sound of breaking bone echoed off stone walls. Viktor howled. Staggered backward. Before he could recover, Zara had him face first against the wall, his arm twisted behind his back at an angle that made Celestina's trained eye recognize professional military restraint. Not street fighting. Not improvised defense. This was special operations technique. Who the hell are you? Viktor snarled through the pain. Zara leaned close. Whispered something in his ear that Celestina couldn't hear. Whatever she said made Viktor's face go ash white. His whole body went rigid. For 3 seconds he forgot about the broken wrist. Forgot about the pain. Forgot everything except whatever words Zara had just put in his head. She released him. Stepped back. Her expression returned to neutral passivity so fast it seemed impossible. Like she'd flipped a switch. The warrior vanished. The maid reappeared. Same woman. Different masks. Viktor fled. Clutching his wrist. Not looking back. Not threatening. Not promising revenge. Just running like the devil herself was behind him. Celestina and Zara stood in the wine cellar surrounded by $1,000 bottles and the lingering smell of gunpowder. Neither spoke for 30 seconds. Celestina's pistol was still in her hand. Zara's wine bottle still gripped tight. My office, Celestina finally said. Now. 30 minutes later, Zara sat across from Celestina in the office that overlooked 8 acres of carefully manicured death. The pistol rested on the mahogany desk between them. Not pointed at Zara. Just there. A reminder of what world they were operating in. Former Nigerian Armed Forces, Zara began, her voice calm as still water. Special Operations. Counterterrorism Unit. I was recruited by CIA as a contractor after my unit rescued American hostages in Abuja. Spent 6 years doing wet work that nobody wants to acknowledge. The kind of operations that don't exist on paper. The kind where you go in dark and come out darker. Celestina said nothing. Just listened. Her mind was already running calculations, threat assessment, strategic value, potential liability. I left 3 years ago. Zara continued. Got tired of being a weapon. Came to America. Wanted a normal life. But normal doesn't pay rent in New York City. So I take housekeeping jobs with wealthy families. Invisible labor from an invisible woman. Nobody notices the black immigrant maid. Nobody looks twice. Nobody asks questions. You notice Viktor. I've seen men like him on 3 continents. Different languages. Different accents. Same disease. Power addicts who prey on anyone they think is beneath them. Anyone they think can't fight back. Zara's jaw tightened. I've also seen what happens when nobody stops them. How it escalates. How it spreads. How it destroys. Celestina leaned forward. Why risk yourself? Teresa's nobody to you. She's somebody to herself. Zara said simply. That should be enough. The words hit Celestina like a physical blow. She felt something crack inside her chest, something she'd built walls around for years. When had she stopped believing that? When had other people become chess pieces instead of humans? When had she started measuring value in usefulness instead of existence? What did you whisper to Viktor? Celestina asked. Zara's smile was sharp as broken glass. Cold as winter steel. I told him I knew about Tatiana Fedorov. The name hung in the air like poison gas. Celestina's breath stopped. She knew that name. Everyone in the criminal underworld knew that name, even if they pretended not to. The 16-year-old daughter of Bratva under boss Dmitry Fedorov. Zara continued. The girl Viktor assaulted 2 years ago in Moscow. The one whose suicide his father covered up with money and threats and dead witnesses. The one whose 3 brothers are still looking for justice, or revenge, depending on how you define it. Celestina stared. Her network was extensive. Her intelligence gathering was supposed to be the best in the Northeast. How did you? You're not the only one with connections, Mrs. Romano. You just have different ones. Zara met her eyes. No fear. No backing down. I told Viktor that if he touches anyone in this house again, anyone, those brothers get a package. Hospital records we obtained. Security footage from the hotel. Witness statements from people who were paid to stay quiet. Everything. The wedding was 3 days away. 3 days until Celestina married a monster. 3 days until the alliance that would make her untouchable. Or destroy everything she'd built. For the first time in a decade, Celestina Valerio didn't know what to do next. I left 3 years ago because I got tired of being a weapon. Zara's voice was steady, but her eyes held something darker. Memories that lived in places words couldn't reach. 6 years of CIA contract work. The kind where you go into countries we're not supposed to be in. Do things we don't acknowledge. Come home and pretend it never happened. Celestina's office felt smaller than it had 30 minutes ago. The mahogany desk. The stolen Monet on the wall. The floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking 8 acres of carefully manicured secrets. All of it suddenly felt like stage props in someone else's play. Normal doesn't pay rent in New York City, Zara continued. So I take housekeeping jobs. Wealthy families. Big houses. Nobody notices the black immigrant maid. I'm invisible. Background noise. People have entire conversations around me like I don't exist. Say things they'd never say if they thought I was listening. You notice Viktor? Celestina said. I've seen men like him on 3 continents. Lagos. Kabul. Moscow. Different languages. Different faces. Same disease. Zara's jaw tightened. They all think power gives them permission. That having money or guns or connections means they get to take whatever they want from whoever's too weak to stop them. Why risk yourself for Teresa? The question hung between them. Outside, evening light turned the windows gold. Somewhere in the house, staff were preparing dinner that would cost more than Teresa made in a month. Life continuing like nothing had changed. Like the world wasn't tilting on its axis. She's somebody to herself, Zara said simply. That should be enough. The words hit Celestina in the chest. Actually physical. Like someone had reached inside her ribcage and squeezed. When had she stopped believing that? When had human beings become game pieces? Resources to be managed? Assets to be protected only because they were useful? Teresa was 19 years old. Sent money to Guatemala every month. Dreamed of nursing school. Celestina had never asked. Never cared. The girl was just staff. Just another invisible face performing invisible labor. Just like Zara had been invisible. Until she wasn't. What did you whisper to Viktor? Celestina asked. Zara's smile could cut glass. I told him I knew about Tatiana Fedorov. The Bratva underboss's 16-year-old daughter. The one Viktor assaulted in Moscow 2 years ago. The one whose suicide Dmitry Fedorov covered up with blood money and dead witnesses. She leaned forward. I told him that if he touches anyone in this house again, anyone, her 3 brothers get a package. Hospital records. Security footage from the hotel. Witness statements from people who were paid to stay quiet. Everything. Celestina's mind raced. Her intelligence network was supposed to be the best in the Northeast. How had she missed this? How had Zara, a housekeeping contractor who'd been here 3 weeks, obtained information that had cost Celestina years and millions to build? Those brothers have been looking for justice for 2 years, Zara added. Or revenge. Depending on your definition. Viktor's father has kept them at bay with threats and bribes. But if they knew the truth? If they had proof? She sat back. The Bratva would tear itself apart from the inside. And Viktor would die screaming. The wedding was 72 hours away. 3 days until Celestina married a monster. 3 days until the alliance that would make her empire untouchable. Or destroy everything she'd spent a decade building. How do you choose between power and principle when you've never believed in principles? 3 days. 72 hours. 4,320 minutes until Celestina Valerio became Mrs. Viktor Konstantin and signed away any remaining pieces of her soul. She stood at her office window watching the sun set over her empire. 8 acres. 47 staff members. 6 major criminal operations generating 300 million annually. Alliances with 12 families across 7 states. Federal judges on retainer. Police commissioners who took her calls. Senators who owed her favors they'd never admit to. All of it built on ruthlessness. On being willing to do what others wouldn't. On crossing lines that most people didn't even know existed. Canceling the wedding meant war. Viktor would see it as unforgivable disrespect. The Bratva would come for her territory, her operations, her life. Rival families would smell weakness and attack. Everything would crumble. But Teresa was 19 years old. Supported 3 younger siblings. Dreamed of nursing school. Had done nothing wrong except exist in a world where powerful men thought vulnerability was permission. Just like Zara had been invisible until she chose to be seen. "What do you want?" Celestina finally asked. Zara stood. "Nothing. I'm quitting. Already have another job lined up in Connecticut. I just wanted you to know the truth about the man you're marrying." She moved toward the door. "Wait." Zara stopped. "What if I told you I was going to call off the wedding?" Zara studied her. Really looked at her. Like she was seeing past the designer clothes and blood diamond and reputation built on fear. "I'd say you're smarter than I thought. It'll start a war. Probably. I'll need people I can trust. People who aren't afraid to fight." Celestina paused. "People who see staff as human beings instead of property." "What are you proposing?" "A different kind of empire." Celestina walked to the window. Below, security teams patrolled the grounds. Men with guns protecting wealth built on violence. Still powerful. Still profitable. But with lines we don't cross. Rules that actually mean something. And someone at my side who'll hold me accountable when I forget why those rules matter. "You're talking about revolution in a world built on exploitation," Zara said. "Evolution. Or extinction." Celestina turned to face her. "Viktor represents the old way. Rule by terror and appetite. That model is dying. Law enforcement is getting smarter. Public attention is increasing. Technology makes secrets harder to keep. The criminal families that survive the next decade will be the ones that adapt." She moved closer. "I became what I am by being ruthless. But ruthless doesn't have to mean cruel. Power doesn't have to mean predation. I built an empire. I can rebuild it better. Why should I trust you? Because 3 hours ago, you had me at a disadvantage in that wine cellar. You could have killed me. Taken whatever you wanted. Disappeared into whatever network keeps you supplied with classified intelligence." Celestina held her gaze. "Instead, you left Viktor alive and came to talk. That tells me you still believe in doing things the hard right way instead of the easy wrong way. I used to believe that too. Help me remember how." Silence. Zara calculated. Evaluated. Weighed options on scales only she could see. Finally, she nodded. The news went out the next morning. Wedding cancelled. Engagement terminated. Reasons: irreconcilable differences. Viktor's response was immediate. He showed up at noon with 12 Bratva soldiers. Black SUVs lined the circular driveway like a funeral procession. Celestina met him in the main hall. Zara stood beside her. 30 of Celestina's most loyal enforcers positioned throughout the house, on balconies, in doorways, behind pillars. All armed. All watching. All waiting for the signal. Was this courage or suicide? Sometimes the line was too thin to see. Viktor Konstantin strode through the entrance like he owned the place. 12 soldiers flanked him, thick necks, cold eyes, bulges under their jackets that weren't phones. They spread out across the marble floor, boots clicking like countdown timers. "You're making a fatal mistake," Viktor snarled. His broken wrist was wrapped in a cast. His face was tight with rage that had been building for 18 hours. "My father will. Your father will receive a package this afternoon," Celestina interrupted. Her voice echoed off marble and crystal. "Delivered by courier to his office in Brighton Beach. Contents include hospital records from Moscow General Hospital dated August 14, 2023. Security footage from the Metropole Hotel showing you entering room 847 at 11:47 p.m. The same room where Tatiana Fedorov was staying. Witness statements from hotel staff who heard screaming but were paid $50,000 each to forget what they heard." Viktor's face drained of color. "You wouldn't dare." "I already did." Celestina stepped forward. "The package also includes a letter explaining that I discovered this information during our engagement and terminated our alliance on principle. That I cannot in good conscience unite my family with someone who preys on children. I've also reached out to Tatiana's 3 brothers directly. Offered them sanctuary in my territory if they want to pursue personal justice. He'll kill you for this." Viktor's voice cracked. Real fear now. Not the confident brutality he wore like armor. "He'll thank me for cleaning up your mess before it destroyed his organization. Tatiana's brothers were already investigating. We just accelerated the timeline." Celestina moved closer. Zara shadowed her right side. "You're done, Viktor. In our world, there's no recovery from this kind of exposure. You're a liability now. And liabilities don't last." "This is her doing." Viktor pointed at Zara with his good hand. "That maid poisoned you against me. She's the one who—" "No. You did that yourself when you put your hands on Teresa. When you assaulted a girl under my protection in my house." Celestina's voice went quiet. "Deadly. Zara just helped me see clearly." Viktor lunged. Not at Celestina. At Zara. Rage overriding survival instinct. Testosterone overriding intelligence. He covered 6 feet before Celestina's pistol barked once. The bullet shattered his kneecap. Viktor dropped screaming. His soldiers reached for weapons. 30 hammers pulled back in response, the sound like a steel rain starting. Viktor's men froze. Math was simple. 12 against 30. In an enclosed space. They'd all die. "Get him out of my house," Celestina ordered. Her enforcers moved forward. Grabbed Viktor by the arms. Started dragging him toward the door while he screamed threats about what would happen, about how she'd die, about how nobody crosses the Bratva and lives. "Tell your father I sent him back breathing as a courtesy," Celestina called after them. "Next time, I won't be so generous." The SUVs peeled out. Gravel spraying. Viktor's screams fading into distance. The main hall fell silent. 30 armed men and women waiting to see if their boss had just signed all their death warrants. Waiting to see if the war would start today or tomorrow. Waiting to see if choosing principle over profit would cost them everything. Zara spoke quietly. "You just started a war." Celestina turned to her. For the first time in years, she felt something besides calculation in her chest. Something that might have been hope. Might have been purpose. Might have been the first step toward becoming human again. "No," she said. "I just chose which side of history to be on when the war comes anyway. The question is, are you with me?" Zara smiled. "Yeah. I'm with you." What happens when a queen decides her empire needs a revolution? Subscribe and turn on notifications, you won't want to miss what comes next. Drop a comment about which character's journey resonates with you most. Your thoughts inspire others and help us create more stories that matter. 6 months later, Celestina stood on the balcony overlooking her transformed empire. The Romano organization still operated. Still generated revenue. Still commanded respect and fear across the northeast corridor. But the rules had changed. No human trafficking. The protection rackets actually protected small businesses now instead of bleeding them dry. The casino money laundered into legitimate real estate development in underserved neighborhoods. Community centers. Youth programs. Investments that built instead of destroyed. Zara Okafor, former maid, current head of security and chief strategist, reviewed reports at the outdoor table. The criminal underworld whispered about them constantly. The mafia princess and the soldier who used to clean toilets. Some called it weakness. 3 families had tested that theory. None of those families existed anymore. Teresa graduated from nursing school in May. Celestina paid the tuition. Not as charity. As restitution for almost failing to protect her. The girl sent a thank you card with a photo of herself in scrubs, smiling like the world was good. Celestina kept it in her desk drawer. A reminder of what she was building toward. Viktor Konstantin was found dead in a Moscow alley 6 weeks after the confrontation. Officially, gang violence. Unofficially, Tatiana Fedorov's brothers. Justice delayed but not denied. Celestina sent anonymous flowers to Tatiana's grave. Just rest now. They answered for it. Cold November evening. The sun painted the sky purple and gold. Zara looked up from her reports. Do you ever regret it? Choosing the harder path? Celestina considered the question. Her empire was smaller now. Cleaner. More sustainable. Less likely to collapse under federal investigation or moral rot from within. But harder. Every single day was harder. Every single day, she admitted. And I'd make the same choice every single time. Why? Because I sleep now. Actually sleep, for the first time in years. Because Teresa's thank you card means more than 1,000 criminal enterprises that operated on suffering. Because the woman in the mirror doesn't make me sick anymore. She glanced at Zara. Because someone finally cared enough to intervene in my life, and it saved whatever was left of my soul. Zara smiled. Everyone feared the mafia boss's fiancée. Nobody feared the maid. That was their mistake. No, Celestina corrected. Their mistake was thinking fear was the only kind of power that matters. You taught me different. Taught me that true power comes from protecting people instead of using them. From building instead of taking. From being someone worth following instead of someone people follow because they're terrified not to. In the distance, the city glowed. Millions of lives intersecting. Invisible people doing invisible labor. People like Zara had been. Like Teresa still was. People Celestina had stopped seeing as humans somewhere along her climb to the top. She saw them now. The serpent had shed her skin. What emerged was something far more dangerous than a simple monster, a woman with power and principles. A kingdom built on strength and mercy. An empire where even the maid could unleash hell and be heard. Where the invisible could become indispensable. Where choosing right over easy actually meant something. Same time tomorrow? Zara asked, gathering her reports. Same time tomorrow, Celestina confirmed. They walked inside together. Queen and guardian. Power and principle. Building something that would last not because it was feared, but because it was worth preserving. The revolution had only just begun. If this story moved you, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next powerful narrative. Share your thoughts in the comments. Which moment hit you hardest? Your reflections inspire others and remind us why these stories matter. Let's build a community that celebrates courage, transformation, and the power of choosing what's right over what's easy. See you in the next one.